with my principles. And that was like the most painful part about it is like, Jake, you have these 3 principles, and if you just went back to these and looked at be present, be accountable, you would have just solved all this issues going on. Like, you have these in place for a reason. You know that you need to do this, and you're just like,
Hmm.
just not showing up for yourself,
Well, it's funny that like about how you said that is like you're saying you want to be present, but you're also saying you want to go back to that person that you used to be. So to me, it's like those kind of contradict, right? Like
Yeah.
if we're being present, the past version of you who, maybe that past version of you had some qualities that you really liked about yourself and things that really were a part of that highest version of you, that best version of you. But if you're truly being present, the need or the want to go back to that past version of you doesn't really exist. Right? I think it's more of like a recognizing where things worked and where things were giving us some desired outcome that we wanted. Like the 8 hours of sleep, even if you weren't getting it consistently, like 8 hours all the time, like you don't need to be perfect in order to create those habits, right? If that's something that you are being intentional about and making sure that you're maybe going to sleep a little bit earlier, putting your phone down a little bit earlier than before, that sleep, like, yes, it's checking the box for your, what was it, 75 hard?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So checking the box for the 75 hard, but also like allowing you to recover properly because you're doing those 2 workouts, allowing you to give your brain some rest, right? Allowing you to be able to wake up the next day with more energy so that you can have an even better day and just like improve mood. Like there's so many other reasons why we do all these things, and I think it's easy to get caught up in the day to day of like, okay, this is my goal, this is what I need to do today, these are all the things that I need to do today so that I can check off the boxes and move on to tomorrow, instead of, okay, I'm doing all of these things today, I'm focused on this one thing today, and by doing this, it's making me be more present, enjoy where I am more, recognize that I don't know what tomorrow brings and I don't know what the rest of today brings. So I'm just going to do the best I can to do this for all of the reasons, not just to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that also became a thing at the end of it. Like, my buddies did it with me, and we were talking about it. And, like, I mostly, like, 90% did it because I wanted to do this interview with this artist, and that was kind of how I was doing it. But, yeah, like, it was no, like, oh, I'm gonna have, like, I want this great physique. This was, like, literally, like, oh, I could probably interview this artist because he had done this sober challenge, and I was like, Jake, let's see how bad you really want this. Like, would you go 75? Like, would you do 75 hard to get this interview? And I did. But, wins and losses, or wins and
Yeah.
learns. But
That's really cool though. I feel
yeah,
like that's interesting too because a lot of times people, there are different reasons why people go into different phases of their life and different goals that they have. And like obviously this is a big one for you. Like that's such a cool thing that motivated you to also become a better version of yourself. Like it's
yeah,
fun to reflect on.
yeah. I think that like that's like the whole, not the whole purpose of this, but I think like why I like doing this is I've realized since I started doing this, like hand in hand, I've become a better version of myself. Like, I think when I was going off to school, I had this mindset, partially because of people around me, and partially because myself, was just like that I had become this other person versus like changing aspects of myself, but keeping who I am as a person still. And I feel like this, like podcast stuff, has become like the niche where it's like this is like the stuff I love to do. I'm surrounding myself with people that are like motivated to better themselves, and like through these interactions, I'm also bettering myself and finding ways to work on things and get better. So
Yeah, I think that's also important to note too, is like we talked about you going back into an environment that you were in 8, 9 years ago, right? And it's like, but that's at the time that probably was your only environment. And now we have things like social media, we have things like podcasts and, the internet and things like that to where our environment isn't just who's directly around us, but we can create an environment through social media. Like that's huge. I'm in 2 mentorship courses now
that's how
and
I signed up for another one.
yeah, but my like main community now and my main environment that I surround myself with is people through social media because those are the people that think like me. Those are the people who want to better themselves. Those are the people who are, going after things that people in my physical world right now probably would think is crazy, right? And like that's the mindset that I have. It's almost like a delusion. Like you just there's no limit for what you can accomplish, and the people that you surround yourself with, if they're constantly putting negative thoughts into the way you think or just around themselves, that's not doing you any good, and then you're not getting anywhere. So I think it's important to realize that you do have a choice of what your environment looks like, even if you're in a place where you can't physically move right now. Like you still have the ability to change what your environment looks like.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, like you said, take the accountability for it and not be like, oh, I'm here, I have to be here, but be like, no, I'm here, and I need to figure out how to make adjustments to be where I want to be, at least. And, you know, I think the accountability piece is a big part of it too. It's like,
Yeah,
you know,
it is
chose to
huge.
be here.
And it's
You can choose to fix
exactly,
it.
and it's okay, right? Like if you don't want to make a change, like that's totally fine.
Yeah,
And there are lots of people who are super happy where they're at, and that's awesome. But like what you can't do is say that you want to make a change and then do nothing about it, right? Like there's always a way out. There's always a way. Like I forget where I saw this, but someone was like, we're not trees, like we're not planted, like you can move, you can figure something out. So it is important to take accountability and to take responsibility for where you're at, and then like just figure out a plan. Like it's not,
yeah,
I don't know. I feel like everybody thinks it's this huge thing, and it's like, no, like if you just woke up in the morning and you decided to write down 3 things that you were grateful for, like your mindset is in a completely different place than if you wake up and you're just like, man, like today's gonna suck. Like, yeah, now it's gonna suck because you just said it was gonna suck.
yeah. And that's, yeah, the mindset thing is so huge. And I think, like looking back at it too, I think a big part of it was that, like during that time when I first came and started doing that, I wasn't doing any podcast stuff. Like when I was finishing in Charleston, I knew I had like a big exam and I was gonna be starting a new job. So I like booked myself super heavy with interviews so I could just like have stuff for like 3-4 months and not do anything. And then like the week I got back into it was the week that, like right around that week was when I had the conversation with the friend, and then also like had an interview. I think around that time was like, oh, we're back, we're fine, we're back to being Jake. Like things are good. We're the normal version of Jake again, or at least we're working on being the normal version of Jake. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's big too. I think every time you make a decision to better yourself in some way, I think it really starts like the positive cycle of like, oh, this feels a little bit like more like a little bit more like me. Right? And
Yeah,
then it's like, okay, what else can I add that can be a little bit more like me? So like you had the podcast, then you had the conversation, then you had like all of these things, and you start to put out this vibration, this energy, and then the things on that higher vibration, that energy will start coming to you. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, my life, like in a matter of what, like a day, 2 days, 3 days, like 1 week of just showing up for myself, like all of a sudden I have all this crazy opportunity. And like you see that compound a lot over time with different people. It's like when you start showing up for yourself, like your life really does change for the better. And it sometimes it seems like it happened overnight, and it's like, no, like it takes effort for sure, but don't be surprised when your life starts to get better when you start taking care of yourself.
yeah, exactly. And I think when you surround yourself and say, like, I'm okay being here because other people are okay being here, is when you get into the mindset of like, no, I'm gonna stay here. And then, because it takes work, it does take work, but it, like, I don't think that without all the moving around, I probably wouldn't have done all the self growth, because you're not in a position to like work on. I mean, you are in a position where you can work on yourself, but you're not like. I think when you like set yourself in situations where you're gonna spend more time with yourself than by yourself, you learn how to become a better version of yourself because you're with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it gives a lot of time to like to think and to reflect and to like just be alone with your thoughts. And I think, even when like I feel like it's equally as hard and sometimes even harder when it's just you also, because like you said, if you're around a bunch of people who are just okay where they're at, a lot of times you're likely to just kind of be okay where you're at and not make a change. But at the same time, like when you do decide you're going to make a change, you're not only fighting with society and what they think is the standard and that you shouldn't, do something new, but also your own brain receptors, right? Because you have these brain receptors that have been the exact same repeating for years and years and years. And then when you decide you're going to make a change, you have this new brain receptor coming in, and there's going to be a lot of resistance there. So I think, it's important to note that yes, it is difficult, but it's repetition. It's like the constant effort that, you just keep trying and keep trying and keep trying, and eventually that new brain receptor takes over the old one, and then it becomes easy, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, like now I can definitely do this. But I think to try, it's normal to expect a little bit of resistance definitely at first, and then probably throughout the process you
Probably
keep
till the end,
going
but
through
it's fine.
difficult things.
It's basically
It's fine. You're choosing your hard, right?
yeah,
You're
you're choosing your hard. And I
yeah.
think with choosing your hard, a really